I stood in the middle of my empty apartment, holding a letter that made my hands shake so hard I could barely read the words. $51 billion. dollars. The number didn't even seem real. It was like trying to count all the stars in the sky or all the grains of sand on a beach. But here's the thing that made my chest hurt so bad, I thought I might fall down right there on my bare floor. Yesterday, I had nothing. I mean nothing. My husband, Jerome, had drained every penny from our joint account. My mother had convinced me to put my savings into her business that never existed. My sister had stolen my credit cards and maxed them all out. And my brother had taken out loans in my name without me knowing. I was 42 years old, and I had exactly $3.27 to my name. I had been evicted from my home of 15 years. I had slept in my car for 2 nights before my cousin let me crash on her couch. I had cried until I had no tears left. And now I was holding a letter that said I had just inherited a $51 billion real estate empire from a grandmother I never knew existed. But wait, there's something I haven't told you yet. Something that makes this whole story even crazier. You see, the people who ruined me, the people who took everything I had, the people who left me with nothing but the clothes on my back, they didn't just happen to destroy my life at the same time. No, no, no. They did it on purpose. They planned it together. My own husband sat down with my own mother, my own sister, and my own brother, and they figured out how to take every single thing I had. And the reason they did it, the reason they all came together to ruin me, because they found out about my grandmother before I did. They knew about the $51 billion, and they thought if they got rid of me, if they destroyed me completely, if they made me so broken and so poor and so desperate, then somehow they could get their hands on that money. But here's the part that made me laugh out loud right there in my empty apartment with tears running down my face. Here's the part that made me realize that maybe, just maybe, God has a sense of humor. My grandmother's will had one very special rule, a rule that my greedy family didn't know about when they were busy destroying my life, a rule that changed everything. What was that rule? Well, I'm going to tell you, but first, I need to take you back to the beginning. Back to when I was just a simple woman named Denise Williams, living a simple life, believing that the people I loved actually loved me back. Before I continue, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from today? Drop your location in the comments below. I would love to know where all my wonderful viewers are from. And while you're down there, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear the story, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this all plays out. Now let me take you back to where this all started. My name is Denise Williams, and for most of my life, I believed I was nobody special. I grew up in a small house in Atlanta, Georgia, with my mother Beverly, my sister Trina, and my brother Deshaun. My father left when I was just 5 years old, and my mother never let me forget that I was the reason he left. He wanted a son, she would tell me, her voice cold as ice. But then you came along. Another girl, another mouth to feed, another disappointment. Now, I know what you might be thinking. How can a mother say such things to her own child? But you have to understand something about my mother. Beverly Washington was not a warm woman. She was not the kind of mother who baked cookies or kissed boo-boos or told bedtime stories. She was the kind of mother who kept score, who remembered every mistake, who made sure you knew that everything she did for you was a sacrifice. But here's the thing about me. Even though my mother was cold, even though she made me feel small, I never stopped trying to make her love me. I worked hard in school. I got good grades. I helped around the house without being asked. I gave her my first paycheck from my very first job at the grocery store when I was 16 years old. "That's it?" she had said, looking at the check like it was dirty. "This is all you could make?" I had worked 30 hours that week, standing on my feet until they ached, smiling at customers even when they were rude. And this was all she could say. But I didn't give up. I told myself that one day I would make enough money to buy her a nice house. I would make her proud. I would finally earn her love. That's the thing about people like me. We spend so much time trying to earn love from people who will never give it, that we don't see the people who are just waiting to take everything we have. My sister Trina was 3 years younger than me, and from the day she was born, she was the favorite. She had lighter skin than me, which my mother thought was better. She had longer hair than me, which my mother thought was prettier. She had a smaller nose than me, which my mother thought was more refined. Trina learned very early that she could get anything she wanted by simply asking for it. And if asking didn't work, she would cry. And if crying didn't work, she would blame me. "Denise took my doll," she would scream, even though I hadn't touched it. "Denise ate my candy," she would lie, even though I had been at school all day. And every single time my mother would believe her. Every single time I would get punished. Every single time I would wonder what was wrong with me that made me so unlovable. My brother Deshaun came along when I was 7, and finally, my mother had what she always wanted: a son, a boy, someone to carry on whatever legacy she thought we had. Deshaun was spoiled rotten. He never had to do chores. He never had to work. He never had to struggle for anything. My mother gave him everything, and he grew up thinking the world owed him whatever he wanted. But here's the strange thing. Even though my family treated me like I was nothing, I never stopped loving them. I never stopped hoping that one day things would be different. I never stopped being kind, even when kindness was never returned. And that kindness, that willingness to give and give and give, even when I got nothing back, that's exactly what they used against me. When I was 24, I met a man named Jerome Thompson at my church. He was tall and handsome, with a smile that made my heart skip a beat. He was charming and funny, and he made me feel like I was the most special woman in the world. "Denise," he would say, holding my hands and looking into my eyes, "I have never met anyone like you. You have the kindest heart I've ever known." We got married after dating for just 1 year. Everyone said we were moving too fast, but I didn't care. For the first time in my life, someone chose me. Someone wanted me. Someone loved me. Or at least that's what I thought. The truth, which I wouldn't learn until 18 years later, was that Jerome never loved me at all. He saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. He saw a woman who would work hard, who would save money, who would build something stable and safe. And he saw someone he could use. For 18 years, I worked 2 jobs while Jerome jumped from one opportunity to another. For 18 years, I managed our finances, paid our bills, and put money away for our future. For 18 years, I believed my husband when he said his business ideas would pay off any day now. But in those 18 years, I built something. I built a nest egg of over $200,000. I bought a small house and paid off the mortgage. I established good credit. I made a life that, while not glamorous, was stable and secure. And then 6 months ago, everything fell apart. It started with a phone call from my mother on a random Tuesday evening. Her voice was shaking, and at first I thought something terrible had happened. "Denise," she said, "I need your help. I'm about to lose everything." She told me she had invested all her money in a restaurant business that had failed. She told me she was going to be homeless. She told me she had nowhere else to turn. Now, I want to pause here and tell you something important. When someone you love asks for help, especially a parent, it's natural to want to say yes. It's natural to want to save them. But I learned something that day that I want you to remember. When someone asks you to save them from a disaster they created, sometimes you're not saving them. Sometimes you're just joining them in drowning. But I didn't know that then. All I knew was that my mother needed me, and finally, I had a chance to be enough for her. I transferred $50,000 to my mother that night. "Thank you, baby," she said. And for just a moment, her voice sounded warm. For just a moment, I felt like a good daughter. For just a moment, I felt loved. That moment didn't last long. 3 weeks later, my sister called. Denise, I'm in trouble, big trouble. I need to borrow your credit cards just for a few weeks. I promise I'll pay it all back. She said she had gotten behind on her bills. She said her job had cut her hours. She said she just needed a little help to get back on her feet. I gave her my credit cards. 2 weeks after that, my brother called. Sis, I found this incredible investment opportunity, but I need better credit to get the loan. Can I use your information? Just your name and social security number? I'll handle everything else. And when the money comes in, I'll cut you in for a share. I gave him my information. And all this time, my husband Jerome was watching, waiting, planning. I didn't know it then, but they had all been talking to each other. They had all been meeting in secret. They had all been working together because they knew something I didn't know. They knew about my grandmother. The grandmother my mother had told me died before I was born. The grandmother whose name was never spoken in our house. The grandmother who apparently had been watching me my entire life from a distance. Her name was Estelle Washington, and she was one of the wealthiest black women in America. She owned buildings, she owned land, she owned entire neighborhoods and cities all across the country. And for some reason that I still don't fully understand, she chose me to inherit everything. But how did my family find out before I did? How did they know about the inheritance? And what was the special rule in my grandmother's will that changed everything? Well, I was about to find out all of that and more. Because just when I thought I had hit rock bottom, just when I thought things couldn't possibly get any worse, something happened that would change my life forever. My phone rang, and the voice on the other end said 5 words that made my blood run cold. Denise, your husband is gone. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. What do you mean Jerome is gone? I whispered, my voice barely coming out. It was my neighbor, Miss Patricia, calling. She was an older woman who lived across the street from the house I used to own, the house that the bank had taken from me just 3 days ago. Baby, I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you this, Miss Patricia said, her voice heavy with sadness. But I saw Jerome loading up a moving truck this morning. He had another woman with him. A young woman. They took everything out of your storage unit, the one you were keeping your furniture in after the eviction. They cleaned it out completely, and then they drove off together. I couldn't breathe. I literally could not make my lungs work. Denise, are you still there? Miss Patricia asked. I'm here, I managed to say. Did you see which way they went? They headed toward a highway, baby. I tried, boss, to stop him, tried to ask him what he was doing, but he just looked at me and smiled. Smiled, Denise, like he didn't have a care in the world, like he hadn't just destroyed a good woman's life. I thanked Miss Patricia and hung up the phone. Then I sat down on the cold, hard floor of my empty apartment and I let myself cry. Not little tears, big, ugly, choking sobs that came from somewhere deep in my belly. I cried for everything I had lost. My money, my house, my furniture, my husband, my family, my whole entire life. I cried until I couldn't cry anymore. And then I did something I hadn't done in a very long time. I prayed. Lord, I whispered, my eyes closed tight. I don't understand what's happening to me. I don't understand why the people I loved have hurt me so bad. But I'm asking you, please give me the strength to get through this. Show me there's a reason for all this pain. Little did I know, God was already working on an answer. The very next morning, I woke up on my cousin Wanda's couch with a stiff neck and a heavy heart. Wanda was the only family member who hadn't asked me for money, the only one who had actually been kind to me without wanting something in return. When I showed up at her door 3 days ago with nothing but a suitcase and tears streaming down my face, she had pulled me into a hug and said, "Stay as long as you need, cousin. We're family, real family." Wanda was getting ready for work when I woke up. She worked as a nurse at the hospital downtown, pulling 12-hour shifts 3 times a week. Even though she was tired, she had made me breakfast before she left. "There's eggs and toast on the stove," she said, pulling on her jacket. "And Denise, today is a new day. Whatever happened before, it's done. You just focus on putting one foot in front of the other. That's all any of us can do." After Wanda left, I forced myself to eat a few bites of food, even though I had no appetite. I was washing my plate in the sink when there was a knock at the door. I froze. Nobody knew I was staying here. What if it was Jerome? What if it was my mother or Trina or Deshawn coming to take whatever little I had left? I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. Standing on the porch was a black man in an expensive gray suit. He was maybe 60 years old with gray hair at his temples and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He was holding a briefcase. "Can I help you?" I called through the door. "Miss Denise Williams," the man asked. "Who wants to know?" "My name is Harold Jefferson. I'm an attorney. I've been looking for you for quite some time, Miss Williams. I have information about your grandmother, Estelle Washington." My grandmother? My mother had told me my grandmother died of a heart attack before I was born. She said there was nothing to tell me about her because there was nothing to know. I opened the door slowly. "I think you have the wrong person, sir. My grandmother passed away over 40 years ago." The attorney smiled, but it was a sad smile. "That's what you were told, Ms. Williams. But it wasn't the truth. May I come in? What I have to tell you is going to change your life, and I think you'll want to be sitting down when you hear it." Something in his voice, something gentle and honest, made me trust him. I stepped aside and let him in. We sat at Wanda's small kitchen table. Harold Jefferson opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers and a photograph. He slid the photograph across the table to me. It showed a beautiful black woman with silver hair and warm brown eyes. She was standing in front of a tall building, wearing a red dress and a pearl necklace. She looked strong and proud and powerful. But that's not what made me gasp. What made me gasp was that she looked exactly like me. The same round face, the same high cheekbones, the same small mole above her left eyebrow, just like the one I had. "This is Estelle Washington," Harold said softly. "Your grandmother. She passed away 3 weeks ago at the age of 92. "3 weeks ago?" I repeated. "But my mother said she died before I was born. She said there was nothing to know about her." Harold sighed heavily. "Miss Williams, I'm afraid your mother told you many lies. Your grandmother was very much alive until recently, and she was one of the wealthiest women in the country." He pulled out more papers, documents with official-looking stamps, photographs of buildings, lists of addresses that went on for pages and pages. "Your grandmother built a real estate empire over the course of 60 years, Harold explained. "She started with one small apartment building in Chicago that she bought with money she saved working as a maid. She fixed it up, rented out the units, and used the profits to buy another building. Then another, then another. She had a gift for seeing value where others saw nothing." I stared at the documents, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. But why didn't she ever contact me? If she was alive all this time, why didn't I know about her? Harold's face grew serious. "Because your mother forbade it. When your mother was 20 years old, she had a terrible falling out with Estelle. Your mother demanded money, a lot of money. She wanted to live a certain lifestyle without working for it. When Estelle refused to just hand over cash, your mother cut off all contact. She told Estelle she would never see her grandchildren. She told everyone in the family that Estelle had died." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My mother lied? All these years? "I'm afraid so, but your grandmother never stopped watching over you, Denise. She kept track of you from a distance. She knew about your graduation from high school. She knew about your wedding. She knew about your struggles, your kindness. She had people who would report back to her about how you were doing." Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't bother wiping them away. She watched me? She knew about me? She did, and she loved you, Denise, even from far away. Even though she couldn't be part of your life, she loved you. She told me many times that of all her grandchildren, you were the one who inherited her spirit, the one who worked hard, the one who stayed kind even when the world was cruel. Harold reached into his briefcase and pulled out one more document. This one looked very official, with gold seals and fancy lettering. This is your grandmother's last will and testament, he said. She wrote it 5 years ago and never changed it. She left everything to you, Denise. Her entire estate, every building, every piece of land, every investment, every bank account. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I just sat there staring at the document in his hands. The total value of the estate, Harold continued, is approximately $51 billion. The room started to spin. $51 billion. I couldn't even imagine that much money. I couldn't even picture it. There must be some mistake, I finally managed to say. Why would she leave everything to me? What about my mother? What about Trina and Deshawn? Harold shook his head. Your grandmother was very specific. She left nothing to your mother, your sister, or your brother. And she left nothing to your husband either. She had been watching, Denise. She knew exactly what kind of people they were. She knew they didn't deserve a single penny. He paused and looked at me with those kind eyes. But there's something else you need to know. Something about how your family found out about the inheritance. Something that explains why they did what they did to you. I leaned forward, my heart racing. Tell me. 3 months ago, your mother received a letter. It was from your grandmother's estate, informing her that Estelle had passed away and that there would be a reading of the will. Your mother wasn't supposed to receive this letter. It was sent by mistake by a new employee in my office. By the time I realized what had happened, it was too late. Too late for what? I asked. Your mother contacted your sister and your brother immediately. She told them about the inheritance, and then somehow she got in touch with your husband. The pieces started falling into place in my mind. The sudden phone calls, the desperate requests for money, the timing of it all. They planned it together, I whispered. They planned to take everything from me. Harold nodded sadly. I believe so. I believe they thought that if they could destroy you financially and emotionally, you would be so broken that you wouldn't be able to handle the inheritance. They thought the estate would then pass to the next in line, which would be your mother. Anger was building in my chest now, mixing with the sadness and the shock. But why? Why would they do that to me? I never did anything but love them. I never did anything but try to help them. Because some people see kindness as weakness, Harold said gently. Some people see a good heart as something to exploit. But your grandmother saw your kindness as strength. She knew that the best person to handle a fortune of this size was someone who understood what it meant to struggle. Someone who would use the money to help others, not just themselves. I sat there for a long moment, trying to process everything I had just learned. My grandmother was real. She had been alive my whole life. She had loved me from a distance, and she had left me everything. But my family had tried to destroy me to steal it. What do I do now? I finally asked. Harold reached across the table and patted my hand. Now we make sure everything is transferred properly into your name. Now we make sure no one can take this away from you. And now you decide what kind of life you want to live. He stood up and handed me a business card. I'll be in touch tomorrow with more details. But for now, I want you to rest. This is a lot to take in. And Denise? Yes? Your grandmother wanted me to tell you something. She said that tell my granddaughter that she was always enough. Tell her that her kindness is her greatest gift. And tell her that the people who tried to break her will never succeed. Because you cannot break someone who knows their own worth. I broke down crying again, but this time the tears felt different. They weren't tears of sadness or loss. They were tears of relief, tears of hope, tears of finally finally being seen. After Harold left, I sat alone in Wanda's kitchen for a long time. I looked at the photograph of my grandmother, studying her face, seeing myself in her features. I thought about all the years I had wasted trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it. I thought about all the money I had given away, all the trust I had placed in people who didn't deserve it. And then I thought about what I was going to do next. Because here's the thing about being betrayed by the people you love. It changes you. It breaks something inside you that can never be fully fixed. But it also clears away all the lies you have been telling yourself. It shows you exactly who people really are. My mother was not a struggling woman who needed my help. She was a liar and a thief. My sister was not someone going through a hard time. She was a manipulator who had been using me her whole life. My brother was not an entrepreneur with bad luck. He was a con man who saw me as an easy target. And my husband was not a dreamer who just needed one more chance. He was a snake who had been waiting 18 years to strike. I knew now what they had done and why they had done it. But there was still one thing I didn't understand. What was the special rule in my grandmother's will? The rule that Harold had mentioned but hadn't fully explained? I would find out soon enough, because the very next day, something happened that would bring me face to face with the people who had betrayed me. Something that would test everything I thought I knew about forgiveness and justice and what it means to be kind in a world full of cruel people. My phone buzzed with a text message. I looked down at the screen and my blood went cold. It was from my mother. Denise, we need to talk. I know about Grandma Estelle. I know about the money. Meet me at my house tomorrow at noon. Come alone. This is family business. I stared at those words for a long time. My mother knew. She wanted to meet. She wanted me to come alone. It was obviously a trap. Anyone could see that. Any smart person would ignore the message and let their lawyer handle everything. But I wasn't going to ignore it, because I had questions. Questions that only my mother could answer. Questions about my grandmother, about my father, about why she had spent my whole life treating me like I was worthless. I texted back one word, okay. Then I started planning. Because I was done being the weak one. I was done being the victim. I was done letting people walk all over me because I was too kind to fight back. Denise Williams was about to show everyone exactly what she was made of. And nobody, not my mother, not my sister, not my brother, not my husband, nobody was going to see it coming. But as I got ready for bed that night, I had no idea just how dangerous this meeting was going to be. I had no idea what my family was truly capable of. And I had no idea that the secrets my mother was hiding were far darker than I could ever imagine. Because my grandmother's death wasn't natural. And the truth about what really happened to her was going to change everything. The next morning, I woke up with a fire burning in my chest. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a woman with a purpose, a woman who was about to get answers. Wanda had already left for her shift at the hospital, but she had left me a note on the kitchen counter. Denise, I made coffee. Whatever you're going through, remember that you're stronger than you know. Love you, cousin. I smiled at the note and poured myself a cup of coffee. As I drank it, I thought about what I was about to do. Going to my mother's house alone was risky. I knew that, but I also knew that if I showed up with a lawyer or the police, my mother would shut down completely. She would never tell me the truth about my grandmother. She would never explain why she had lied to me my entire life. No, I had to do this my way. I had to look her in the eyes and make her tell me everything. But I wasn't stupid. Before I left Wanda's apartment, I did 3 things. First, I wrote down everything Harold Jefferson had told me and put it in an envelope with his business card. I hid the envelope in Wanda's closet behind a box of old photographs. If something happened to me, at least someone would find it. Second, I called Harold and told him where I was going. He begged me not to go alone. He said it was too dangerous. But when I explained that I needed to hear the truth from my mother's own mouth, he understood. He made me promise to call him the moment I left my mother's house. Third, I downloaded a voice recording app on my phone. Whatever my mother said to me, I was going to have proof. At 11:30, I took the bus across town to the neighborhood where I grew up. My mother still lived in the same house, a small brick home with a chain-link fence around the yard. The paint was peeling off the shutters, and the grass was overgrown. My mother had always complained about not having enough money to fix things up, but somehow she always had enough money for new purses and fancy dinners. I stood outside the gate for a moment, gathering my courage. I could see a car in the driveway that I didn't recognize. A shiny black SUV that looked brand new. That was strange. My mother drove an old Honda that barely ran. Taking a deep breath, I opened the gate and walked up to the front door. Before I could even knock, the door swung open. My mother stood there, looking at me with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't the cold disappointment I was used to. It wasn't the fake warmth she put on when she wanted something. It was something else entirely. Something that looked almost like fear. "Denise," she said, "you came." "You asked me to," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You said we needed to talk about Grandma Estelle." My mother's eye twitched at the mention of that name. "Come inside. We have a lot to discuss." I followed her into the house, and immediately I knew something was wrong. The living room had been completely redecorated. New furniture, new television, new curtains. Everything looked expensive. "When did you get all this?" I asked, looking around. My mother waved her hand dismissively. "A few weeks ago, I came into some money." Some money, right. The $50,000 I had given her to save her from losing everything. I didn't say anything. I just followed her to the kitchen where she gestured for me to sit at the table. The same table where I had eaten breakfast as a child. The same table where she had told me over and over that I would never amount to anything. "Do you want something to drink?" my mother asked, her voice unnaturally sweet. "I have iced tea." "No, thank you," I said. "I just want to talk." My mother sat down across from me. She folded her hands on the table and took a deep breath. "Denise, I know you must have questions about your grandmother, about why I told you she was dead, about a lot of things." "That's putting it mildly," I said. "You lied to me my whole life, Mama. You told me I had no grandmother. You told me she died before I was born. But she was alive this whole time. She watched me grow up from a distance because you wouldn't let her be part of my life." My mother's face hardened. "She told you that? That lawyer told you that?" "He told me everything. He told me Grandma Estelle tried to be in my life, but you cut her off. He told me she loved me. He told me she left me everything." For a moment, something flickered in my mother's eyes, something dark and ugly, but then it was gone, replaced by a mask of motherly concern. "Denise, baby, you don't understand. Your grandmother was not a good woman. She was controlling and manipulative. She tried to tell me how to raise my children. She thought her money gave her the right to run everyone's life. I protected you from her. I protected all of you." "Protected us?" I laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call it?" "Well, you protected us right into poverty while she was sitting on billions of dollars. You protected us from a woman who could have helped us, who could have made our lives better." "Money isn't everything," my mother snapped. Then she caught herself and softened her voice. "I mean, money can't buy happiness. I wanted you to learn the value of hard work. I wanted you to earn things for yourself." "And I did," I said. "I worked 2 jobs for 20 years. I saved every penny I could. I built something. And then you and Trina and Deshawn and Jerome took it all away from me." My mother's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb with me, Mama. I know you all planned it together. I know you found out about the inheritance 3 months ago and decided to destroy me so you could get the money for yourselves." For a long moment, my mother just stared at me. Then slowly a smile spread across her face. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was cold and calculating and cruel. "Well," she said, leaning back in her chair, "I guess there's no point in pretending anymore." My heart was pounding, but I kept my face calm. "So you admit it. You admit you did this to me on purpose." "Of course we did it on purpose," my mother said, her voice dripping with contempt. "Do you think I was going to let you, of all people, inherit everything? You who couldn't do anything right? You who was always so weak and pathetic, always crying about wanting to be loved?" The words hit me like punches, but I didn't look away. I had heard worse from her. I had survived worse. "I was your daughter," I said quietly. "I loved you. I did everything I could to make you proud. And that's exactly why you didn't deserve that money," my mother shot back. "People who try that hard to be loved are weak. They're easy to manipulate. They're losers. Your grandmother saw something in you that she should have seen in me. I was her daughter. I should have inherited everything. But instead, she left it all to you because she thought you were special." She spat out that last word like it was poison. "I was her granddaughter too," I said. "Just like Trina, just like Deshawn. Why did she choose me?" My mother's face twisted with old anger. "Because she always liked you best. Even when you were a baby, she would hold you and say you had her eyes. She would say you had her spirit. It made me sick. You were just a baby. You hadn't done anything. But she looked at you like you were made of gold." I thought about the photograph Harold had shown me. My grandmother's face. My face. The same eyes. The same mole above the eyebrow. "She loved me," I whispered, more to myself than to my mother. "She didn't know you," my mother snapped. "She just liked the idea of you. The perfect little granddaughter who would carry on her legacy." Well, I wasn't going to let that happen. I cut her off. I told everyone she was dead. I made sure you would never know she existed. "But she still left me everything," I said, "even after all those years. Even after you tried to keep us apart. She still chose me." My mother slammed her hand on the table, making me jump. "And that's exactly why we had to do what we did. When I got that letter saying she had died and there would be a reading of the will, I knew you were going to get everything. Everything that should have been mine. So I called Trina and Deshawn and we came up with a plan." "A plan to destroy me," I said. "A plan to get what we deserved," my mother corrected. "We figured if we could break you down enough, make you so poor and so desperate that you couldn't function, then maybe you'd be declared unfit to inherit. Maybe the money would go to the next in line. Maybe I could finally get what my mother owed me." My hands were shaking under the table, but I kept my voice steady. "And Jerome, how does he fit into all this?" My mother laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Jerome was the easiest part. That man never loved you, Denise. He married you because you were stable, because you would support him while he did nothing. When I told him about the inheritance and what we were planning, he jumped at the chance. He couldn't wait to help take you down." I felt sick to my stomach. 18 years of marriage, 18 years of believing I had a partner, a best friend, someone who loved me, and it was all a lie. "Where is he now?" I asked. "Where did he go with all my things?" My mother shrugged. "How should I know? Probably shacked up with that little girlfriend of his somewhere. He got what he wanted, a truck full of your furniture and a promise of a cut of the inheritance once we got our hands on it." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. All this time, I had been surrounded by enemies. People who smiled in my face while plotting my destruction. People who took my kindness and used it as a weapon against me. But there was still something I needed to know. something that had been nagging at me since Harold had told me about my grandmother's death. How did she die? I asked, opening my eyes. Grandma Estelle, how did she die? For the first time since I arrived, my mother looked uncomfortable. She shifted in her seat and avoided my eyes. Old age, she said quickly. She was 92. Her heart just gave out. That's funny, I said, because Harold told me she was in perfect health for a woman her age. He said she was active and sharp and had no history of heart problems. My mother's face went pale. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just asking questions. You seem nervous, Mama. Is there something you want to tell me? Before my mother could answer, we heard the front door open. Heavy footsteps came down the hall. And then two figures appeared in the kitchen doorway. Trina and Deshawn. My sister looked different than the last time I had seen her. She was wearing designer clothes and expensive jewelry. Diamonds glittered on her ears and around her neck. She looked at me with a smirk on her face. Well, 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 she said. Look who decided to show up. The big, important heiress herself. Deshawn stood next to her, his arms crossed over his chest. He was wearing a gold watch that probably cost more than I used to make in a month. Surprised you had the nerve to come here, sis. Thought you'd be too busy crying somewhere. I stood up slowly, facing all three of them. My mother, my sister, my brother. The people who were supposed to love me. The people who had tried to destroy me. I came here for answers, I said, and I got them. I know everything now. I know what you did and why you did it. Trina laughed. So what? What are you going to do about it? Go cry to your lawyer? Newsflash, Denise. We're not scared of you. We never have been. That's because you have always underestimated me, I said. You always thought I was weak. But weak people don't survive what I've survived. Weak people don't keep going after losing everything. Weak people give up, and I'm still standing. Deshawn took a step toward me, trying to intimidate me with his size. Standing for now, but you're not walking out of here with that inheritance, sis. That money belongs to this family. I am this family, I said, not backing down. I'm the one Grandma Estelle chose. She watched all of us grow up, and she decided I was the one who deserved to carry on her legacy, not because I was perfect. Not because I was special, but because I stayed kind, even when the world was cruel. Because I kept my heart open even when everyone I loved kept breaking it. My mother stood up, her face red with anger. You think you're better than us. You think you're so righteous. Let me tell you something, little girl. That money came from somewhere. Your precious grandmother wasn't as saintly as you think. She did things, ruthless things. She stepped on people to build her empire. Maybe she did, I said. But she also tried to make it right at the end. She left everything to someone she knew would use it to help people. Someone she knew wouldn't be corrupted by greed. Someone she knew had a good heart. A good heart, Trina sneered. A good heart doesn't pay bills, Denise. A good heart doesn't buy cars or houses or designer clothes. A good heart is worthless. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and for the first time I didn't see someone to envy or fear. I saw someone empty. Someone who would never be satisfied no matter how much she had. Someone who would always want more. I feel sorry for you, though, I said quietly. All of you. You spent so much time scheming and plotting, trying to take something that was never going to be yours. And now you have nothing. Nothing? Deshawn laughed. We've got plenty. We've got the money you gave Mama. We've got your credit maxed out. We've got loans in your name. We've got everything we took from you. You've got stolen money and stolen credit, I corrected. And when I file police reports and fraud charges, you'll have criminal records too. The room went silent. My mother, Trina, and Deshawn all exchanged nervous glances. You wouldn't do that. my mother said, her voice wavering. We're your family. You stopped being my family when you decided to destroy me, I said. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a choice. The same kind of choice Grandma Estelle gave you all those years ago. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I had been recording everything since I walked through the door. I held it up so they could see. I have everything you just said on tape. Every confession, every admission, every cruel word. I could take this to the police right now and have all three of you arrested. My mother's face went white. Denise, please, I'm your mother. Or, I continued, ignoring her, you can tell me the truth about one more thing, and if you tell me the truth, I'll think about showing you mercy. What do you want to know? Trina asked, her voice shaking. I looked directly at my mother. I want to know what really happened to Grandma Estelle. I want to know how she really died, and I want to know what you had to do with it. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's face went from white to gray. Trina and Deshawn looked at each other with something that might have been fear. And then my mother said something that made my blood freeze in my veins. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. We just wanted to talk to her. We just wanted to convince her to change the will. But she wouldn't listen. She kept saying you were the one. You were always the one, and then things got out of control. I felt the room spin around me. What are you saying, Mama? What are you saying? My mother looked at me with tears in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were tears of regret or tears of fear for herself. I'm saying that your grandmother didn't die of natural causes, Denise. And I'm saying that if you want to know what really happened to her, you're going to have to be prepared for the truth. A truth that's going to change everything you think you know about this family. Before she could say another word, there was a loud knock at the front door. A voice I didn't recognize shouted from outside, "Police! Open up! We have a warrant!" My mother's face twisted in panic. Trina screamed. Deshawn bolted for the back door, and I stood there in the middle of the chaos, my phone still recording, my heart pounding, knowing that everything was about to explode. But I never could have predicted what would happen next. I never could have predicted who had called the police. And I never could have predicted the secret they were about to uncover in my mother's basement. A secret that would prove, once and for all, that my family was capable of far more evil than I had ever imagined. The front door burst open, and police officers flooded into the house. There were at least 6 of them, all wearing bulletproof vests in serious expressions. Behind them, I saw Harold Jefferson, my grandmother's lawyer, standing on the porch with his phone pressed to his ear. "That's them!" one of the officers shouted, pointing at my mother and Trina. "Nobody move!" Deshawn had already disappeared through the back door, but I heard more shouting from outside. They must have had officers covering the rear of the house, too. A few seconds later, 2 policemen dragged my brother back inside, his hands already in cuffs behind his back. "Get off me," he yelled, struggling against them. "I didn't do anything. This is harassment." My mother stood frozen in the middle of the kitchen, her face a mask of shock and terror. Trina had collapsed into a chair, sobbing hysterically. I just stood there trying to make sense of what was happening. A tall black woman in a gray suit walked through the chaos. She had sharp eyes and an air of authority that made everyone pay attention. She looked at me first, then at my mother. "I'm Detective Lorraine Carter," she said. "Which one of you is Beverly Washington?" "I am," my mother said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What is this about? Why are you in my house?" Detective Carter didn't answer right away. She nodded to 2 of the officers who headed toward the basement door. Then she turned back to my mother. "Beverly Washington, you're under arrest for suspicion of murder in the death of Estelle Washington. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Murder. The word hit me like a truck. I had suspected something was wrong when my mother started talking about my grandmother's death. But murder? My own mother? No, my mother screamed as the officers put handcuffs on her wrists. I didn't murder anyone. It was an accident. Tell them, Denise. Tell them it was an accident. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I just watched as the woman who gave birth to me, the woman who raised me, the woman who had spent my entire life making me feel worthless, was led away in handcuffs. Trina was arrested next, still crying and begging the officers to let her go. She looked at me with hatred in her eyes. "This is your fault," she screamed. "Everything was fine until you came along. You ruined everything." Deshaun was already in the back of a police car outside. Through the window, I could see him hanging his head, finally quiet, finally defeated. Harold Jefferson came inside and put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Are you all right, Mr. Williams?" "How did you know?" I asked him. "How did you know to call the police?" "I didn't call them," Harold said. "The police have been investigating your grandmother's death for the past 2 weeks. When she died, her personal nurse noticed some irregularities, things that didn't add up. She reported her concerns to the authorities, and they've been building a case ever since." "What kind of irregularities?" Harold hesitated. "Perhaps we should talk somewhere else. This is going to be difficult to hear." But before we could leave, Detective Carter approached us. Her face was grim. "Miss Jefferson, Ms. Williams, I need you both to come with me. We found something in the basement that you need to see." I didn't want to go down there. Every instinct in my body told me to run away, to leave this house and never come back. But I knew I had to face whatever was waiting for me. I had to know the truth. The basement stairs creaked under our feet as we descended. I had only been down here a few times as a child. My mother always kept it locked, saying it was full of old junk and broken furniture. But as we reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw that she had been hiding much more than junk. The basement had been converted into a small office. There was a desk covered in papers, a filing cabinet, and a computer. On the walls were photographs and documents connected by strings, like something out of a detective movie. But that wasn't what made me gasp. On one wall, there was a giant map with dozens of red pins stuck into it. Each pin had a label attached. I walked closer and read some of them. They were addresses of buildings and properties all across the country. My grandmother's properties, my inheritance. "It looks like they've been tracking the estate for years," Detective Carter said. "We found records going back at least a decade. Bank statements, property assessments, investment portfolios. They knew exactly how much your grandmother was worth." "But my mother said she only found out 3 months ago," I said, "when she got the letter about the will." Harold shook his head sadly. "That was another lie, I'm afraid. Look at this." He pointed to a stack of letters on the desk. They were all addressed to my mother, and they all came from the same sender, my grandmother. "Your grandmother tried to reconcile with your mother many times over the years," Harold explained. "She sent letters every month, birthday cards for you and your siblings, invitations to visit, offers to help with money. Your mother received every single one of them." I picked up one of the letters with trembling hands. It was dated 15 years ago. "Dear Beverly," the letter read in elegant handwriting, "I am writing once again to ask for your forgiveness. I know I was not a perfect mother. I know I made mistakes, but I love you and I love my grandchildren. Please let me be part of your lives. I have so much I want to share with them, especially with Denise. She has my spirit, Beverly. She has my heart. Please don't punish her for the problems between us. Let me know her. Let me love her. Your mother, Estelle." Tears rolled down my cheeks as I read those words. My grandmother had been reaching out my entire life. She had been trying to connect with me, to love me, to be part of my world, and my mother had hidden it all. "There's more," Detective Carter said. She led us to another corner of the basement where a cardboard box sat on a shelf. Inside were dozens of gifts, still in their original wrapping. Tags attached to each one read things like, "For Denise on her 10th birthday," and "Merry Christmas to my beautiful granddaughter." Presents. My grandmother had sent me presents for years, and I never received a single one. "Your mother kept them all," the detective said quietly. "She never gave you any of them." I reached into the box and pulled out a small wrapped package. The tag said it was for my 16th birthday. Inside was a beautiful gold locket. When I opened it, there was a tiny photograph of my grandmother on one side and a photograph of me as a baby on the other. She had loved me. All those years she had loved me, and I never knew. "Ms. Williams, there's something else you need to see," Detective Carter said. "This is the evidence that led to today's arrests." She walked over to the computer and pressed a button. A video began to play on the screen. It was security footage from what looked like a hospital room. I recognized my grandmother from her photograph, lying in a bed hooked up to monitors. She looked frail but alert. And standing beside her bed were three people I knew all too well. My mother, my sister, my brother. The footage had no sound, but I could see them arguing with my grandmother. My mother was pointing her finger, her face twisted with anger. Trina was crying. Deshawn stood by the door, looking nervous. Then my grandmother pointed to the door, clearly telling them to leave. My mother grabbed something from the bedside table. A pillow. She held it for a moment, and my grandmother's eyes went wide with fear. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." On the screen, my mother pressed the pillow over my grandmother's face. Trina turned away, covering her eyes. Deshawn rushed forward and tried to stop my mother, but then he stepped back, letting it happen. It was over in less than a minute. My mother removed the pillow and checked my grandmother's pulse. Then all three of them quickly left the room. I fell to my knees, unable to stand anymore. My mother had killed my grandmother. She had smothered her with a pillow while my sister watched, and my brother did nothing to stop it. "The hospital's security system automatically backs up to a cloud server," Detective Carter explained. "Your mother didn't know about it. She thought she had gotten away with it. But when the nurse reported her concerns, we pulled the footage." Harold knelt beside me. "I'm so sorry, Denise. I'm so sorry you had to see that." "She killed her," I sobbed. "She killed my grandmother for money that wasn't even hers." "Your grandmother changed her will 5 years ago," Harold said. "She suspected something like this might happen eventually. That's why she added the special rule I mentioned before." I looked up at him through my tears. "What rule? What are you talking about?" Harold helped me to my feet. "Let's get out of this basement. Let's get you somewhere safe, and then I'll explain everything." The next few hours were a blur. Police officers asked me questions. Paramedics checked my blood pressure and gave me water. Reporters gathered outside my mother's house, their cameras flashing through the windows. Finally, Harold managed to get me away from the chaos. He drove me to his office downtown, a quiet place with leather chairs and walls lined with law books. He sat me down and poured me a cup of tea. "Drink this," he said. "It will help calm your nerves." I took a sip, barely tasting it. My mind was still replaying that video, my grandmother's face, the pillow, the way she stopped moving. "The special rule," I said finally. "Tell me about the special rule." Harold sat across from me and folded his hands. "Your grandmother was a very smart woman. She knew that when people found out about her fortune, some of them might do terrible things to get their hands on it. So she put a clause in her will, a protection for you." He pulled a document from his desk and showed it to me. "According to this clause, if any member of the Washington family is found to have committed a crime against Estelle Washington or against you, the designated heir, that person automatically forfeits any potential claim to the estate. Furthermore, any money or property obtained through criminal means must be returned in full." "So my mother and Trina and Deshawn get nothing," I said. They get nothing, Harold confirmed. And any money they took from you, any debt they created in your name, all of it must be repaid from their own assets. If they don't have enough to cover it, the estate will cover the difference and then you can pursue legal action to recover those funds. I sat back in my chair trying to process everything. My family had tried to destroy me to steal an inheritance. They had murdered my grandmother, and in the end, they would get nothing. What about Jerome? Byron asked. My husband. He was part of this too. Harold nodded. The police are looking for him now, based on your testimony and the recording you made at your mother's house. They have enough to charge him with conspiracy and fraud. He won't escape justice. Justice. The word felt strange in my mouth. I had spent so many years accepting injustice, accepting cruelty, accepting being treated like I was worthless. And now, finally, the people who had hurt me were going to face consequences. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like grief. My grandmother is gone, I said quietly. I'll never get to meet her. I'll never get to thank her for believing in me. I'll never get to tell her that her kindness meant something. Harold reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small envelope. Actually, there's one more thing. Your grandmother left this for you. She wrote it 5 years ago when she changed her will. She asked me to give it to you personally after everything was settled. I took the envelope with trembling hands. My name was written on the front in the same elegant handwriting I had seen on the letters in my mother's basement. I'll give you some privacy, Harold said, standing up. Take as much time as you need. After he left, I sat alone in that quiet office, holding my grandmother's final message. I was afraid to open it, afraid of what she might say, afraid of how much it would hurt to read words from a woman I would never get to know. But I had to read it. I owed her that much. I carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside to My dearest Denise, it began. If you are reading this letter, it means I am gone and you have learned the truth about your inheritance. I wish I could have told you myself. I wish I could have held you in my arms one more time, the way I held you when you were just a baby. But life doesn't always give us what we wish for. Sometimes it gives us something different, something that hurts but also teaches. I have watched you from afar your whole life, and I have seen what kind of woman you have become. You are kind, Denise. In a world that rewards cruelty, you have stayed kind. You are generous, even when others take advantage of your generosity. You are strong, even when everyone around you tries to make you feel weak. That is why I chose you. Not because you are perfect, not because you never make mistakes, but because your heart is good, and a good heart in the hands of someone with resources can change the world. I am leaving you everything I have built. It is a great responsibility, and I know it might feel overwhelming at first, but I have faith in you. Use this money to help others. Use it to lift up people who have been pushed down. Use it to show kindness to those who have known only cruelty. And Denise, please do one more thing for me. Forgive them, not for their sake, but for yours. The anger and hate you might feel toward your mother and your siblings, it will only poison your own heart if you hold on to it. Let it go. Not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. I love you, my granddaughter. I have always loved you. And even though I am gone, that love remains. It will be with you always, guiding you, protecting you, giving you strength when you need it most. Go forward, Denise. Go forward and build something beautiful. With all my heart, your grandmother, Estelle. I don't know how long he sat there crying. It could have been minutes or hours, but when the tears finally stopped, something had changed inside me. I wasn't the same woman who had walked into my mother's house that morning. That woman was broken, unsure, searching for answers. The woman I was now had found those answers, even though they were painful. My grandmother believed in me. She saw something in me that no one else saw, and she trusted me to carry on her legacy, I wasn't going to let her down. I carefully folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Somewhere out there, Jerome was hiding, thinking he had gotten away with his crimes. Somewhere out there, my mother and sister and brother were sitting in jail cells, finally facing the consequences of their actions. And somewhere out there, there was a world full of people who needed help. People who had been pushed down and forgotten. People who needed someone to show them kindness. $51 billion. It was more money than I could ever spend in 100 lifetimes. But it wasn't about the money, it was about what I could do with it. The lives I could change. The good I could put into the world. My grandmother built an empire from nothing. She started with hope and hard work and a dream of something better. Now it was my turn to build something. Something that would make her proud. Something that would prove that kindness is not weakness. Something that would show the world that the people who tried to break you down will never win, not as long as you keep your heart open and your spirit strong. But before I could move forward, there was one more thing I had to one more person I had to face. My phone buzzed with a text message. I looked down and felt my heart stop. It was from Jerome. Denise, I heard what happened. I know about your mother. I know about the arrests. Please, baby, let me explain. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you. I've always loved you. Meet me tonight at our spot by the lake. Just you and me. Let me make this right. I stared at those words for a long time. Why, the man who had betrayed me, who had helped destroy my life, who had run off with another woman and everything I own, was asking me to meet him alone. It was obviously a trap. Anyone could see that. But just like before, I wasn't going to run from this. I was going to face it head on. Because I had questions for Jerome too. Questions about what he really knew and when he knew it. Questions about where my things were and who that woman was he left with. Questions about 18 years of marriage that turned out to be nothing but lies. I texted back, I'll be there. Then I called Detective Carter and told her exactly where I was going and why. If Jerome thought he was going to catch me off guard, he was in for a big surprise. Tomorrow I would start my new life. Tomorrow I would begin the work of honoring my grandmother's legacy. But tonight I had one more battle to fight, one more snake to confront, one more person who thought my kindness made me an easy target. They were all about to learn just how wrong they were. The lake was quiet when I arrived just before sunset. This was the place where Jerome had proposed to me 18 years ago. He had gotten down on one knee right by the old wooden dock and told me I was the love of his life. I had cried happy tears and said yes without hesitation. I thought that moment was the beginning of my fairy tale. Now I knew it was just the beginning of a very long con. I parked my car in the small lot near the water and waited. Detective Carter had promised me that undercover officers were already in position, hidden in the trees and bushes around the lake. I was wearing a wire so they could hear everything. If Jerome tried anything, they would be on him in seconds. But I wasn't scared, not anymore. I had faced my mother and survived. I had watched my grandmother's murder on video and found the strength to keep going. Jerome was the last piece of this nightmare, and after tonight I would finally be free. A few minutes later, I saw headlights approaching. A familiar car pulled into the lot and parked a few spaces away from me. Jerome stepped out, looking nothing like the confident man who had cleaned out my storage unit just days ago. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes were bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Good, I thought. Let him suffer. Denise, he said, walking toward me with his hands raised like he was surrendering. Thank you for coming. I know I don't deserve it, but thank you. I got out of my car and stood my ground. I didn't come here for you, Jerome. I came here for answers. I'll tell you anything you want to know, he said, his voice desperate. I'll explain everything. Just please don't send me to prison. I almost laughed. You think that's up to me? You helped my mother murder my grandmother. You helped steal everything I had. You ran off with another woman and left me with nothing. And now you want me to save you from prison? Jerome's face crumpled. I didn't know about the murder, Denise. I swear to God, I didn't know. Your mother told me it was just about the money. She said if we could break you down, make you give up, then the inheritance would go to her instead. She never said anything about killing anyone. But you went along with it anyway, I said. You sat in our home, ate food I cooked, slept in our bed, and the whole time you were planning to destroy me. I was weak, Jerome admitted, tears streaming down his face. I was greedy and stupid and weak. Your mother promised me $5 million if I helped. $5 million, Denise. I thought that was my ticket to finally being somebody. To finally being the man I always wanted to be. You could have been somebody by being a good husband, I said. You could have been somebody by loving me honestly for 18 years instead of lying to my face every single day. Jerome fell to his knees on the gravel. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Denise. You were always good to me. You worked so hard. You never complained. You deserve so much better than what I gave you. I looked down at this man who had been my husband, my partner, my supposed best friend, and I felt something I didn't expect. Pity, not forgiveness, not yet, and maybe not ever. But pity for a man who was so empty inside that he threw away a real marriage for the promise of money that was never going to be his. Where are my things, Jerome? I asked. The furniture from the storage unit. Where did you take it? It's in a warehouse on the south side of the city, he said, still on his knees. I can give you the address. I haven't sold anything yet. I was waiting to see how things played out. And the woman, the one Miss Patricia saw you with? Jerome's face twisted with shame. Her name is Crystal. I met her 6 months ago at a bar. She doesn't mean anything to me, Denise. She was just there. I was lonely and scared about what we were planning, and she was just there. 6 months. He had been cheating on me for 6 months while also plotting to steal everything I had. The depth of his betrayal still shocked me, even after everything I had learned. You're going to tell the police everything, I said. Every detail of what my mother planned. Every conversation you had with her and Trina and Deshawn. Everything. I will, Jerome promised. I'll cooperate fully. I'll testify against all of them if that's what it takes. It won't save you from consequences, I warned him. You're still going to face charges, but if you help the police, maybe things will go easier for you. Jerome nodded frantically. I'll do whatever you want, whatever you say. Just please, Denise, please tell me you don't hate me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I can't stand the thought of you hating me. I thought about my grandmother's letter. She had asked me to forgive, not for their sake, but for mine. She had warned me that holding on to anger would only poison my own heart. I took a deep breath and made a choice. I don't hate you, Jerome, I said quietly. I don't have room in my heart for hate, but I also don't love you anymore. Whatever we had, whatever I thought we had, it's gone. You killed it when you chose money over me. Jerome sobbed harder. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are, I said, but sorry doesn't undo what you did. Sorry doesn't give me back the 18 years I spent believing in a lie. Sorry doesn't bring my grandmother back. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Detective Carter. Within seconds, police officers emerged from the trees and surrounded Jerome. He didn't resist as they put him in handcuffs. He just kept looking at me with those pathetic eyes. For what it's worth, he said as they led him away, you really were a good wife, Denise. The best wife any man could ask for. I was just too broken to appreciate it. I watched them put him in the back of a police car. I watched the car drive away. And then I stood alone by the lake as the sun finished setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. It was over, all of it. The lies, the betrayal, the scheming. My mother was in jail. My sister was in jail. My brother was in jail. And now Jerome would join them. I was finally, truly free. The next few weeks were busy in ways I never expected. Harold Jefferson helped me through the process of officially inheriting my grandmother's estate. There were meetings with lawyers and accountants and financial advisors. There were documents to sign and properties to inspect and decisions to make. $51 billion dollars turned out to be even more complicated than I imagined. My grandmother owned apartment buildings in 23 cities. She owned shopping centers and office complexes and empty land waiting to be developed. She owned stocks and bonds and investments in companies I had never even heard of. But she had also left me something else, something that mattered more to me than all the money in the world. She had left me her personal journals, 50 years of handwritten entries documenting her journey from a young woman working as a maid to one of the wealthiest people in America. I spent hours every night reading her words, getting to know her through her own voice. She wrote about the struggles she faced as a Black woman trying to build wealth in a world that didn't want her to succeed. She wrote about the discrimination and the setbacks and the people who told her she would never amount to anything. She wrote about staying strong when everything seemed hopeless. And she wrote about me. Denise took her first steps today, one entry from when I was a baby said. Beverly sent me a photograph. My granddaughter has my eyes and my smile. I pray every day that life will be kind to her. I pray that she will have the strength to overcome whatever obstacles she faces. I pray that one day I will get to hold her again. She never got that chance. My mother made sure of that. But reading those words made me feel like my grandmother was right there with me, guiding me, encouraging me, reminding me why I had to keep going. I made a decision during those weeks. I was going to honor my grandmother's memory by continuing her work. I was going to use her fortune to help people who needed it most. I started a foundation in her name, the Estelle Washington Foundation for Hope. Its mission was to provide housing, education, and job training for people who had fallen on hard times. Single mothers trying to escape abusive relationships, young people aging out of foster care, families facing eviction through no fault of their own. All the people like me, people who worked hard and played by the rules and still got knocked down by life. People who just needed someone to believe in them. I hired Wanda to help me run the foundation. She quit her nursing job and became my right hand, helping me make decisions about where the money should go and how we could do the most good. She was the family I should have had all along, the family that loved me without conditions or ulterior motives. 3 months after my grandmother's death, I stood on a stage in downtown Atlanta at the opening ceremony for our first community center. There were hundreds of people in the audience, reporters with cameras and microphones, city officials and community leaders, and regular people, families from the neighborhood who had heard about what we were trying to do. I was nervous. I had never given a speech before. I had spent most of my life trying to be invisible, trying not to take up too much space. But my grandmother's voice was in my head, telling me to be brave, telling me that my story mattered. My name is Denise Williams, I began, my voice shaking slightly. 3 months ago, I was homeless. I had lost everything. My money, my house, my family. I thought my life was over. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. But I learned something important during that dark time. I learned that the people who try to break you down can never truly destroy you. Not if you hold on to who you really are. Not if you keep your heart open to kindness and hope. I looked out at all those faces, all those people who had come to support this dream. My grandmother, Estelle Washington, built an empire from nothing. She faced obstacles that would have crushed most people. But she never gave up. She never stopped believing that things could get better. And she spent her whole life trying to help others, even when no one was watching. I took a deep breath and continued. She left me her fortune, but more importantly, she left me her example. She showed me that true wealth isn't about how much money you have. It's about how much love you give. It's about how many lives you touch. It's about leaving the world a little better than you found it. Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. This community center is just the beginning. We're going to build homes for people who need them. We're going to create programs that help people get back on their feet. We're going to prove that kindness is not weakness, that generosity is not foolishness, that the people who give with open hearts are the true heroes of this world. I paused and looked directly into the cameras. To everyone out there who feels like they're not enough, to everyone who has been told they're worthless, to everyone who has been betrayed by people they trusted, I want you to know something. You are enough. You have always been enough, and your kindness, your big, beautiful heart, is your greatest gift. The audience erupted in applause. Wanda rushed onto the stage and hugged me. I could see people in the crowd wiping tears from their eyes. After the ceremony, I walked through the community center, looking at everything we had built. There was a daycare for working parents, a computer lab for job training, a food pantry stocked with fresh groceries, meeting rooms for support groups and counseling sessions. This was my grandmother's legacy. This was what she had worked her whole life for. Not buildings and bank accounts, but the chance to make a difference. I found a quiet corner and pulled out her letter, which I kept with me always. I read those final words one more time. Go forward, Denise. Go forward and build something beautiful. I folded the letter and held it against my heart. I will, Grandma, I whispered. I promise I will. 6 months later, I got a phone call from Detective Carter. She told me that my mother had been convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Trina and Deshawn had been convicted as accessories and received 25 years each. Jerome had cooperated with the prosecution and received a reduced sentence of 10 years. I didn't attend any of the trials. I didn't want to see them again. But I did write each of them a letter. To my mother, I wrote, I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry your hatred in my heart. I hope you find peace in whatever time you have left, and I hope you know that despite everything, I survived. I more than survived. I thrived, because I am my grandmother's granddaughter, and nothing you did could ever take that away from me. To Trina, I wrote, you spent your whole life being jealous of things that didn't matter. You never saw that the things that really mattered, love and kindness and integrity, were available to you all along. I hope prison gives you time to think about what you threw away. To Deshawn, I wrote, you could have been anything. You had every opportunity to make something of yourself. But you chose the easy path, the path of taking from others instead of building something of your own. I hope you use this time to become the man you were always capable of being. And to Jerome, I wrote, I loved you once, truly and completely, and part of me will always grieve for the marriage I thought we had. But I don't miss you. I don't wish you back in my life. I only wish you healing. I only wish you the chance to become a better person. Because everyone deserves that chance, even people who have done terrible things. I never heard back from any of them. That was okay. I wrote the letters for myself, not for them. Writing them helped me let go of the last of my anger. It helped me close that chapter of my life and move forward. Today, 5 years later, the Estelle Washington Foundation has helped over 50,000 families get back on their feet. We've built affordable housing in the 12 cities. We've sent hundreds of young people to college on full scholarships. We've created job training programs that have helped thousands find employment. I'm not the same woman I was when this all started. I'm stronger now, more confident, more sure of who I am and what I'm meant to do. The pain of what my family did to me hasn't disappeared completely. Some wounds leave scars that never fully heal. But those scars remind me of how far I've come. They remind me that I survived the worst thing that could happen and came out stronger on the other side. My grandmother used to say that kindness is the most powerful force in the world. I understand what she meant now. Kindness isn't about letting people walk all over you. It isn't about being weak or naive. True kindness is about having the strength to keep your heart open even when the world tries to close it. It's about choosing love over hate, hope over despair, generosity over greed. My mother chose greed and it destroyed her. My siblings chose greed and it cost them their freedom. My husband chose greed and he lost everything that mattered. But I chose kindness. I chose to honor my grandmother's memory. I chose to build something beautiful. And in the end, kindness won. If you're watching this and you're going through something hard right now, I want you to know that it gets better. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but eventually the storm passes. Eventually, the sun comes out. Eventually, you find your way to something better. Don't give up. Don't let the people who hurt you win. And never, ever stop being kind. Because kindness isn't weakness. Kindness is power. And you have more power inside you than you could ever imagine. This is Denise Williams signing off. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, no matter how dark things get, there is always hope. Always.